Joker meets Leatherface. That is what I think the killer is going for in Clownface, a low-budget British slasher movie written and directed by Alex Bourne. So the focus of this movie is on this young girl called Jenna, and she comes home after a night out to find her roommate missing and her roommate's boyfriend slain very brutally. And we learn that there is a masked serial killer who kidnaps some victims, kills other, and takes the flesh off their bodies and what makes this kind of clown mask out of human flesh. He is pursued by this kind of strange, jittery guy that may have had an experience with him when he was a little younger. And this clown-faced killer seems to be taking a particular interest in Jenna, as he seems to be targeting people close to her. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So let's first of all talk about what works here with Clownface. Clownface himself, I have to say, although not particularly original, because we have seen at this point very many killer clown type characters, horror icons, things like that, but nonetheless I do feel his look is quite gruesome. As I've mentioned, it kind of reminds me of that Leatherface look where his mask is kind of stitched together with kind of human flesh, but obviously with a kind of a clown motif. I was also reminded a little bit of the killers from the Wrong Turn series as well. And he's kind of like a tall guy, and I think he's got like a cool looking lair. There's kind of like this underground kind of tunnel network and things like that. So I actually think the killer and the way he's kind of portrayed, very much, standard kind of slasher, a variety of weapons, doesn't really kind of say anything, seems to be somewhat kind of impervious to pain, things like this. I think if you're a slasher fan, there is a lot to enjoy here with this particular, kind of character. And it's clear, obviously, that I think they're trying to make maybe this guy, what a character, maybe that will kind of stick around and maybe evolve into its maybe own low-budget franchise. Who knows? Now, what else can I say works in this movie? The movie, for its faults, and I'll come on to it again, tries to have a little bit of a different style of storytelling here. And I applaud the attempt to have maybe a somewhat kind of original way of telling the story. So it really focuses on Jenna, who is this kind of our main character through most of the movie, but also the girl that was originally taken, her roommate. We actually kind of see from her point of view as well. And we actually get quite a lot of flashbacks from her, how she met her boyfriend, things like this. And it was kind of like, I don't really know why we're showing these scenes particularly, since kind of like the boyfriend is killed for pretty much straight away in the movie. We don't really need to see how, they met and things like that, because we know what's happened. But it was interesting in a different kind of style of non-linear narrative in a way. I actually thought I think some people will have an issue with some of the acting here, but at the same time I do feel there are some quite natural kind of conversations, particularly with the two roommates and stuff like that, and the kind of other female members of the cast here, where I did feel some of the acting was actually quite good and felt very natural, and the conversation seemed very typical of what you'd expect, people that age to be kind of talking about, stuff like that. Some of the acting from some of the other stuff, it's kind of like this weird, skittish guy that kind of follows Jenna around, seemed a little bit too kind of like weird for being weird's sake, if that makes sense. And a few other instances as well where I felt some of the acting was a little bit kind of disappointing. The other thing I would say for slasher fans here, there's a reasonable amount of gore here. Our killer likes to stick his hands in people's stomach and pull out their intestines and things like that. So there is a reasonable amount of gore, and we've already talked about kind of slicing skin off here. Although it's not like every other scene, we do see some fairly kind of explicit and kind of well put together practical makeup effects here, which was good. So let's kind of talk about maybe what doesn't work here, and I'm going to actually reiterate some of the things that I did say that work, because I feel it's a tale of two sides, this one, because as I've mentioned, some of the acting was good, but some of it wasn't. And I've already mentioned this guy who is this sort of kind of character, who sort of almost like the Loomis character, if you like, from Halloween, that's kind of like trailing this kind of killer. Just a bit of a bizarre, too out there performance, I would say, to be somewhat kind of like, no one would take that guy seriously, which is what happens in the film, but it just seems like he just seems just as crazy as the killer, and I think maybe went a little bit too far with it, to be quite honest with you. But there are a few other peripheral characters as well. Some of the kill scenes, I mean, there's a big scene towards the end of the movie where this killer ends up going into kind of a house party, and there just seems to be like people lining up to get killed. It's a quite poorly shot scene. There are some fun gore effects in there, but like, you know, we have one killer going into this crowded house of people, and yet he manages to kill quite a lot of people who just seem to stand there and almost wait for this kind of killer to slowly walk over to them and kind of gut them. And also we have no, you know, we spend quite a lot of time at this party. There's no police that turn up or anything like that. No one seems to kind of phone the police or anything. You know, there's no sign of them within this kind of entire movie. I'm guessing that's possibly down to budget restraints, but nonetheless it seemed like a strange thing to kind of like miss out, really. I mean, we mentioned that the police haven't got any leads about the original missing girl, etc. But that's kind of really it. And I've kind of, again, I've already mentioned this in some of the positives, but the way we have these flashbacks with our kind of original girl who gets kind of sort of kidnapped at the beginning of the movie seemed kind of pointless to me. They just seem to pad out the running time a little bit, and I wonder if they were kind of like reshoots to kind of just make it a little bit more of a feature-length movie, because they really served no purpose. We already have seen the fate of what happens to the guy, and we know that this girl has got kidnapped. We don't really need to see how they met. It just seemed like a bizarre thing, and they spend a lot of time detailing the fact that she has like a rape fantasy, and it doesn't have anything to do with the plot. You know, it just is there to kind of be edgy, maybe at the beginning, but again, it just seems to have a lot of extraneous things here that I have a feeling is there to kind of pad out the running time. Also, there's kind of like this goth girl that keeps turning up, and again, doesn't really seem to have any point within the story here. Overall, I think if you are a I'm not the biggest Slash fan, to be honest with you, but I do think if you are a Slasher fan, there is enough to enjoy here and warrant a watch. Particularly because I feel this one doesn't kind of like shy away from the violence. And I have to say, I did think the killer himself was pretty cool, so I'll give it that. I would say for a Slasher fan, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Because I do feel it kind of like, it does service that audience. But maybe if you're not a Slasher fan, you might find it just a little bit kind of run-of-the-mill, which is, to be honest with you, what I thought. But I think for the fans that it's trying to reach, I think it does an above-average job. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Do leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.